Okay. Hello, Ash. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining me. Ash is going to dispel some myths and educate us about what it means to be a member of the LGBTQIA community. Yes?
Yep, that's about right. Yes.
Okay,
I
thank you.
mean,
I
I
saw,
I kind I
I'm sorry,
kind
go
of came in here not quite knowing what you were gonna ask me, so I'm ready for anything, I guess.
ahead. Okay, well, you know, as I said just a minute ago when we first connected, I was at a barbecue over the weekend, and I told them I was going to have you on and ask some questions. Just there's so many questions because not that this is new, but it's new that you can actually state your sexual orientation these days without getting beaten or killed for the most part. I mean, it's still
Yeah.
not the safest thing, but so a lot of us, I grew up, I was coming of age in the 70s, 80s. Um, you know, Gay people, for want of a better word, it was just starting to become where people were talking about it. Before that, it was like, not that there weren't gay people, but God help them if they would come out.
Yeah, it would also be true for anyone in the LGBTQ community.
Yes. Okay. So here, that's a good question. So I'm just saying gay and using it as an umbrella term, but that's not a correct term for everyone in the umbrella. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you technically can use it, but gay specifically refers to either people who are attracted to the same gender or specifically men who are attracted to the same gender.
Okay. Okay. So Ash, how do you identify?
Uh, I identify as transgender, which just means not identifying with whatever gender you were assigned to at birth or supposed to be. Gender fluid, which means that my gender changes. Uh, and I also identify as multisexual, which is actually an umbrella term for anyone attracted to multiple genders. But I've just not been able to find a label that I like feel concrete enough in myself and my understanding of my identity to use. So I'm just going with that.
So that makes sense because how old are you, Ash?
16.
Okay, so this is when pretty much everyone's sexuality is kind of in full bloom. So you're figuring sex out as it is, right?
Yeah.
But one thing you know for sure is you're not straight. You're not female attracted to males, correct? You know that you don't fit in that.
Yeah, and I'm not a male solely attracted to females either. So, uh yeah, I think it's funny since I am again gender fluid and my gender changes, it would be kind of impossible for me to be straight because when your gender is different all of the time, what even is the opposite gender? Like,
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's really smart. So, okay, so this is a big question people have because a lot of people think like, oh, it's just popular now to say that you're LGBTQIA, whatever, and kids don't that they don't have enough experience even in sexuality. Some of them haven't even had actual sex with another human being to really even know who they are. And my feeling that as a straight woman, when I was 16 years old, I hadn't had sex yet, but I knew what I was attracted to, and it wasn't women. I wasn't fluid. I
yeah.
knew that I was attracted to men. So I guess the question I have, what is the difference between or no, let me go back to this. How old were you when you were like, okay, I'm not feeling the way I society's telling me I should feel about the opposite sex?
Well, honestly, pretty recently, just like a few months ago, because, the world always told me that, I was a girl and therefore I was attracted to men. And I am attracted to men, but at some point I just kind of went, wait a minute. can I be attracted to people who aren't men? And I thought about it, and the answer was yes. So I don't know. I I still think one of the reasons that I do still think I'm figuring out my sexuality and stuff is because I haven't even been in a relationship with someone yet. So I can't exactly claim to be an expert on who I'm attracted to and whatever. But I just because I haven't been in a relationship yet doesn't mean I've never had a crush or never found someone pretty or attractive.
Okay,
So
that makes sense. Okay, can you explain to us the difference between gender identity and sexual orientation? Is there a difference?
there is very much a difference. So, you know, if gender identity and sexual orientation were the same, then all women would be straight. No, lesbians would be an entirely separate gender. That is not typically how it works. So, gender identity is literally like what gender you feel like, which there's a lot of different genders, like obviously male and female are the most common ones, but some people can have a gender that feels more neutral or have a gender that feels very distinct but is not male or female. Any, like, there can be a gender that's any combination or mix of those things, and even other weirder genders that would be associated with things you wouldn't consider gender at all. Sexual orientation is the gender or genders that you are or are not attracted to, and how you're attracted to those genders. Because, you know, if you identify as male or male aligned and you're attracted to other people of that gender, then you're gay. If you identify as female or female aligned and you're attracted to males, then you're straight. Uh, if you're attracted to multiple different genders, then there's a lot of different identities you could identify as, but the most commonly known one is bisexual. I could go on, but yeah.
Okay, that was helpful. And what does cisgender mean?
Cisgender is uh basically, you know, you're born, the doctor says it's a boy, and you feel like a boy, you are a boy, and you never feel like that's wrong in any way. Or, you know, the doctor says it's a girl and you identify as a girl. Basically, it's just not being trans. It's the opposite of transgender.
Got it. And so just to be clear, I don't know if this is clear or not. So you were born female, and but do you identify as male now, or like you said, you're still kind of figuring out, you just know you're not straight, so to speak?
Um, are we talking about my gender identity or sexual orientation right now? I feel
Well,
like
that's good.
that's
Okay.
there's
Do it. Do it. Like, okay, if we were talking about your gender, what would that mean? That would mean
so
what you were born.
uh yeah, well, my gender is, well, you know, what I feel like. Like, do I feel like a boy, a girl, something else? The thing is, since my gender changes constantly. So, I don't know how that works, but it most certainly does work considering the fact that ever since I started paying attention to my gender, I've noticed that it is always changing.
That's right.
But
And so would you identify as gender fluid? Is-
yes.
Okay. Got that.
So
Got that.
that's what it means to be gender fluid, is that your gender and your gender identity is changing, and you can feel different genders at different times. So, you know, those can be just a couple genders, or on the other end of things, there's me, and I've just experienced like all the genders on all of the spectrums. It's crazy.
This is really interesting. I believe there's a lot happening right now, and spirituality. I'm not religious. I used to be very religious, but I'm really spiritual. And I do believe there's a divine purpose behind all of this, everything that's happening. And it's not that, I mean, maybe there are more uh, people who are born out of cisgender now. I don't know, or maybe it's just less dangerous for them to come out as they are. But I
Uh,
really do believe part of it is helping us to release judgment because we are such a judgmental uh, I don't want to say society because it's really all over the world. And my personal opinion is a lot of that stems from religion. And in order to break open all these boxes we put ourselves in and all the rules we're following, I think we need to see these people who we were taught is they're sinning or whatever it is are just really beautiful people. Not everybody, obviously, just like not every straight person is a beautiful, kind person. But I think it's really
be a
important.
jerk.
Pardon what?
Everyone can be a jerk.
They certainly can. They certainly can. But I think if we're going to evolve as people, we need to really take a look at all these beliefs and rules we've been fed and ask ourselves if that's really what we believe. And I have to tell you, Ash, I have been obsessed with near-death experiences since I was a teenager. I I don't know why. I just am because I don't believe in traditional heaven, but I just know we come from a place, we go back to it, and it's indescribable. But I have probably watched thousands, and there's millions of NDE accounts out there, which are near-death experiences. People who die go to the other side, but then they come back. They're brought back to life for whatever reason. Not once has anybody ever mentioned that whatever this being is, source, God, whatever, has admonished them for their sexuality or said being anything except cisgender is a sin. And I think it's interesting that everyone kind of just skips over that. Like these people have been there. Their lives are transformed. They've been face to face with whatever the source is, and they don't bring up abortion. They don't bring up LGBTQ. It's not even, that's us. That's our rules. And I so appreciate what you're doing. And it's really brave. I mean, at 16, but this is how we slowly turn this Titanic is say, look at this beautiful young person who is articulate and I'm sure has a kind heart, and is a good person. See, not any of this strange, weird stuff. It's just different that we're just not acclimated to it. But that's all it is. So let's kind of just open our minds a little bit. So that's why I'm so glad you're here. And I have a question. You may know this, you may not. And please tell me. Sorry, I'm boring you. You probably feel like you're in school. I
No,
know.
no, I just have to yawn. That's all. I'm not bored.
Thank you. Now, I saw when your mother's a pastor, and I saw this little interview where you came out right at church, which is just incredibly brave. And you did this left-handed analogy because people are saying, obviously, oh, there's so many more LGBTQIA people because they're talking about it and everyone's just being influenced. So that's the only reason there's more today. And you did a really good analogy of left-handed people. Do you remember it? And if you do, can you share it?
Writing, drawing, whatever with your left hand was bad and terrible, and anyone who did that was punished. But then at some point, that prejudice stopped existing, and miraculously, the amount of people who were left-handed just suddenly increased until a certain point at which it just has stayed the same ever since. So, about 12% of the population, including myself, is left-handed. Uh, but the moment that there started to be less prejudice around being left-handed, the amount of people who were left-handed increased, not because people were being influenced to be left-handed, but because there was no longer this ridicule around being left-handed. And, nowadays, the idea of someone being ridiculed for their handedness is just baffling to everyone. And hopefully, at some point in the future, that will be how it is for queer people as well. Like, people people were oppressed for liking people of the same gender. Why? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I hope you're right too. So that kind of goes into my next question now, because people say this all the time that, oh, these kids, they're just influenced because now everybody's talking about it. So that's what's making them say that they're gay or trans or whatever. Do you really feel that what kids are reading, hearing, seeing will influence them to change their sexual identity?
Well, I do think that sometimes learning about new labels and stuff can cause people to identify as those labels, but that's not because they've suddenly said, "Ooh, look at this cool marginalized identity. I think it'll be trendy to identify as it." No. What happens is that as people are more educated about things, they can either find out things about themselves at an earlier point in their life, or they can find labels that helped to fit something that they'd felt for a long time but had never had the words to describe before. Like, if I never learned what the term gender fluid was, I still would have realized that my gender identity was always changing. I just would have been extremely confused because I didn't have a word for that and I didn't know what was going on.
Let me ask you this. In school nowadays, do you go to school or are you homeschooled?
I go to school, yes.
Okay, and you're in the Midwest, correct?
Yes.
Not exactly overflowing with liberals. Midwest, it's you're not in California. So what is it like in school? Is it very accepted? Are is your generation kind of like this is no big deal? Or do you still run into some issues?
Well, in person where I live, it's a largely very liberal area, and the
Hmm.
school I go to is very liberal. So, I once had the gender fluid pride flag as my profile picture, and someone asked, "What's that? What is your profile picture?" And I explained the flag and my identity to them, and they just went, "Okay, cool." Like, there's there's kids in my school who openly identify as trans or non-binary, and no one really bothers about it or bats an eye. So I'm lucky enough to live in a pretty
Hmm.
liberal area where that's not really an issue, and I can openly be myself.
Wow, that is good. I'm very happy to hear that. One thing I wanted to ask, so this is new. It used to be LGBTQ. Now it's LGBTQIA. So can we just do each letter so we know what it stands for? L?
Yeah, L is for lesbians. So, that's typically women who are attracted to women. G is for gay. I'd be surprised if if people didn't know what gay people were, but men who are typically attracted to men. Uh, B is bisexual, which is being attracted to multiple genders, but not necessarily all of them. Um, T, trans, I think I already went over that. Uh, Q is queer, which is sort of like an umbrella term for just anyone who doesn't fit into the idea of like gender norms and whatnot. Gender norms. I guess I don't think there's such a thing as sexuality norms. There might be, but that might be the wrong term. But anyways, there's that. And then I is for intersex, which is people who have traits of both being male and being female physically. Like they are biologically a mixture of both.
Hmm.
Uh, so people will be like, there are two genders because there are just two sexes, but that's not really true because sex isn't binary either. Um, and then A stands for uh two main things. Aromantic, which is someone who just doesn't experience romantic love or attraction. Like, obviously, they can feel love, but not specifically romantic love. And asexual, which is people who experience little to no sexual attraction.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned something in the little bit of the interview I saw that you did about Christians and when they say, what do they say? I love you, but I, whatever that is. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like when they say I love you, but I don't approve of your lifestyle, or how
Yeah,
that was.
so there are plenty of Christians I've met, mostly online, where they're just like, uh, God loves everyone and everyone is welcome on my profile, but I don't support the LGBTQIA plus community or whatever. And that's kind of like, I mean, for one thing, it's quite ironic because you're telling someone that all are welcome and God loves everyone, but also this part of you that you did not choose and cannot change is wrong, and I don't support it because my religion says that I can't or shouldn't. A lot of Christians will hide behind their religion as a reason to be bigoted, which is really irritating because, like, I am a Christian. And I am also queer. Shut up.
Right.
God doesn't hate me. I'm not being sinful by factor of existing. Thank you very much.
I love that. Preach. Um, you know what I find interesting about that is it's we're Christians, we're talking about people who follow the teachings of Jesus, but you wouldn't know that today by a lot of the Christians that we see in public. But what I always find interesting is out of all the things that we're told he said, the thing that he repeated a lot was don't judge, do not judge, do not judge, do not judge. And that's like the number one thing they do. That's a judgment. When they say, I love you, but I don't approve of your lifestyle, that means I'm judging your lifestyle is wrong. It's like, I just, I don't get it. It's mind blowing to me. It's so hypocritical and it makes no sense. Okay, so before we wrap up, what do you think? What is one thing you wish people would understand more about you?
Hmm. Me specifically, uh I don't know. I guess it just really annoys I just said this, but it really annoys the heck out of me how many Christians think that being queer is wrong and a sin and think that they can use their religion to excuse those beliefs. And I get just wish that those people would A, realize that none of this is anything I chose, and B, just realize Jesus never said anything about queer people. But and like darn, I don't remember what most of the Bible verses that do say anything are, but a decent amount of them I think are like misinterpretations or mistranslations in of themselves. And also, Christians follow the teachings of Jesus, not a few specific verses in the Bible that justify your bigotry.
That you just said a mouthful right there. Thank you so much, Ash. Okay, let me just make sure there was nothing. Oh, Well, we kind of touched on this. I just briefly, what we hear a lot is people are afraid that all this stuff being out in the open is going to influence uh, kids, other people to be gay or LGBTQ or whatever. And I can tell you for myself that if you could choose, I would be a lesbian because I love women. I'm very supportive of women. I'm so proud to be a woman. I cannot make myself be attracted to women. I'm hetero. I love men. So I guess I mean, I'm sure you feel that like this happened because of something inside of you, not something you saw and then you went, well, I think I'm going to choose to be that now. Is that correct? Or I don't want to put
Yes,
words in your mouth.
I, yeah, there was, I don't, I'd barely even heard of gender fluid before I started to identify as it. I don't, darn, I'm trying to think how much I think I like might have vaguely known about gender fluidity. Yeah, I knew about it. So, but I'd never heard of a person being gender fluid. I'd never seen any gender fluid representation. And to this day, I think I've only ever seen one piece of media with a gender fluid character in it. Um, it's a book called Both Can Be True. And I guess you could theoretically also count Loki from the Marvel movies, but I really don't think he counts because even if it he technically is gender fluid, it's literally never shown at any point in any way. And I think most people don't even know that he's technically gender fluid. I sure as heck didn't. So, uh yeah, I don't really count him. Anyways, yeah. Um, but yeah, I do not think anyone ever has looked at a marginalized group and decided that this would be a fun trend to hop on. No one likes uh having their human rights thrown into question, getting harassed by people online and being told that your existence is a sin by people online and having all these Christians tell you that they don't support your existence and blah blah blah. Like I can think of not very many pros to identifying as queer in some way, and very, very many cons. Like no one wakes up in the morning and says, "Oh my God, I'm gonna be non-binary. It's gonna be so trendy and cool, and all the kids will like me." Like, no, that doesn't happen.
That's a really, really good point. I heard someone say too, like there would be no gay people over like 40 years old because up to a certain point, you couldn't even see anyone on television that was gay. I think Ellen was the first like openly gay television character or whatever. Everything was straight, straight, straight. So if you're really if your sexuality is influenced by what you're seeing and watching and
Oh
hearing,
yeah.
everyone would be straight because that's all there was, for so many years.
Well, yeah, that is the thing is like if we're talking about representation influencing people, then everyone ever would be straight and cisgender because I have seen practically zero representation of any trans people at all. Like I'm trying to think of a trans character and I can barely think of anyone off the top of my head. There's like a little bit of gay representation, but not much. And like, there's all sorts of queer identities that are barely represented or frequently misrepresented, so on and so forth. Like, yeah, no. I'm really trying to think of a single trans character from somewhere, and I can only think of one. And that one singular character basically just exists to say, look, a non-binary person. Okay, now they're gone forever. Like they barely even say anything. So if anyone were ever influenced to be trans, I don't know what they would be looking at because I see about no trans representation ever.
Well, Ash, thank you so much for doing this. Honestly, I really want you to hear you are a beautiful soul and incredibly courageous. And I don't think you even feel like this is courageous inside of you. It's such a natural part of you, but it's really courageous and it makes a difference to come out and speak and answer some of these questions and clear some of these things up because we do have to turn this racist, sexist, homophobic Titanic around because that's all programming. And the way that you release programming is through education. So thank you so much for doing this. And it makes me very happy to hear that younger people are much more open and that you're not suffering anything in your school. That makes me very happy. So, and it also makes me very hopeful for our future. So thank you so much, Ash.
You're welcome.
Take care.